What's up everyone, it's your girl Shay here and welcome to my channel. If you are new, welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. And I feel like it is a running theme in these videos for me to be wearing this jacket. I feel like I've worn it in the past few videos, and yes, I have other jackets. It's just for some reason it ends up working out that when I record these videos I'm wearing this jacket. But anyway, so I decided that for this video I wanted to talk about translations and localizations. That's because there's a lot of talk always in the anime community about translations and localizations, and a lot of people have issues with translations. What I mean about that is a lot of people sometimes really wish that a lot of translations were like literally just like direct translations from the Japanese, which many a times they are not. And for localization, this is pretty much basically where they take basically slang or words for whatever English speaking country or whatever country they are translating for and basically stick it into the show. And I want to talk about that as well. Now, the main reason why I want to talk about this is because, like I said, a lot of people always talk about this within the anime community, and I thought I would give my 2 cents about it and look a little bit of research regarding translations and all that. I'm not going to touch on the whole like pay scale for translators because of the simple fact that it is going to vary based on company, based on where you are, and so on and so forth. So I'm not really going to talk about the pay that a lot of translators tend to get. But let's get started with this video, and of course, like always, comment below your thoughts, and of course if you like this video, subscribe. So translations, as many of us know, is basically where they take an anime that is in Japanese and basically translate it into the English language. Many times it is with subtitles, so the speaking voice of a lot of the characters will still be in Japanese, but at the bottom of the screen you will see subtitles that has translated what these characters are saying, and it is then written at the bottom of your screen for you to basically read it. A lot of people seem to prefer like subs over dubs and so on and so forth, and I'll touch on that topic as well probably later on in this video. Now, as far as translation is concerned, a lot of people feel like translation should be direct from the Japanese. Like, for example, whatever says in Japanese, it should then be said in English or written in English for us to understand what is actually being said. And there's many times where it has came out that the translations are off, or they're different, or they're not entirely correct. So I ended up actually looking at a little bit of research online, and there actually appears to be a Twitter thread that a translator actually made talking about some of these translations issues and basically pretty much explaining why a lot of this tends to happen. And I'll probably most likely will link the Twitter thread down below if you want to check it out for yourself. It was made in April, so please don't go commenting all of a sudden on this individual's Twitter thread. It's purely just for you guys to read so that you guys can read it for yourselves and kind of see the information that this individual is basically talking about when it comes to translating and so on and so forth. So the individual goes on to state that when it comes to translating, there are many times where there is no way to do a direct translation, because many times there are words in the Japanese language that just do not have an English equivalent. So you have to basically come up with, the individual doesn't use the term made up, but they use the term as far as like they try to find what word will best fit with what is actually being explained in the scene at all, just so that they are able to basically have you as an individual who are watching the show to basically get an understanding of what is happening in the scene. And that's going to happen across no matter what language a piece of material or piece of media is translated into. There are many words in the English language that just do not have a direct translation into other languages, whether that is slang or just words that we tend to use on an everyday basis. And in Japanese, that's basically no different. There are words that they say, slang that they use, that just does not have an English equivalent, and we have to, or the translators basically have to come up or find a word that will best fit. Now, a lot of times the individual did go on to say that these changes, or pretty much using these types of words, or in these instances, it's not just on the translator's part that they say, hey, I'm going to change this is just basically how it's going to be. They actually have to make an argument to whomever is their boss to say, this is the word that I chose to use and this is why. So it doesn't just happen all of a sudden it ends up in the show. No, they have to run it by their boss and make sure that it was actually okay. And sometimes it doesn't always work. I'm sure there are instances where they might use a word and they might say, maybe we can find a different word that can be used, or maybe there is something a little bit closer to what is happening. This kind of sounds strange or seems kind of weird. And then it basically won't make it into the finished product that you see. They also went on to explain the fact that the reason why they actually tried really hard with translations, or they have always tried really hard with translations, is because there are individuals who do understand the language, and they will very quickly, as many of us know, call out the translators if the translation is incorrect. Now, this is completely different from dubs, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, but this is just purely just for subtitled reasons. And I know some people will say, well, why don't they just take whatever is subtitled or whatever is written in manga that is translated from Japanese to English? And they could. But the thing is, though, usually manga distribution is usually done by a completely separate, different company. And sometimes the manga itself hasn't even been licensed in the States. It's just the anime property itself. So therefore, they can't really use those kinds of translated works to help with the translation of the actual show. So how does this transfer to dubs? Because a lot of people have issues with watching a subtitle and then they watch a dub of a show and the language or the subtitled version is very different from what is in the dub. And so the best that I could come up with is pretty much that this is basically due to lip flaps, or basically what's going to fit within the parameters of what that dub voice actor or actress is basically saying. And so many of us have seen those old films where they are in a different language, they dub it over, but for some reason the voice and the lip movements just do not match. So basically in anime, they make sure that what they're saying fits into the mouth movements of that particular character. So there could be moments, or there could be times where what is written in the subtitle just does not fit within the parameters of what is happening in the show when the person is actually saying those words. So they have to change it so that it can fit and so that it doesn't go over, it doesn't, close early, or they're ending it early. So they have to probably lengthen or shorten it so that it basically makes sense. And that's probably a whole different team of translators that works on dub works, just because of the fact that they have to make sure that that line that they wrote actually works and or fits. And I'm sure it goes the exact same way of like if a word cannot be translated, purely because of the simple fact that there is just no English equivalent, and so they have to put in different words, or so on and so forth. So that's kind of what I feel probably ends up happening when it comes to dubs, compared to when you're translating something from the original language into a subtitled version so that people can basically read it and understand what is happening or going on within that particular scene. So yeah, that's kind of what I think, but feel free to comment below your thoughts overall about that. Now for localization, now this is something that a lot of people kind of get upset about. And basically localization is where they take a piece of work and basically it is of course in a different language, and they basically make it to where it is understandable for wherever that piece of content or that media is going to be seen. So how does this work for anime? So how this works for anime is pretty much where sometimes you'll see in a anime where they're talking about a piece of pop culture. Shin-chan is notable for this. They always talk about pop culture. But what they did in that show is they took the pop culture in that show, which was very much Japanese pop culture, and made it more for Western audiences. Now, they did get approval from the Japanese company to be able to do this, but basically that was localization. They took actual slang terms, they took actual pop culture artists from the US and put it into the show. That way that us, as the viewer, could understand and laugh along with said jokes. And a lot of times this is why localization happens. A lot of times localization happens because of the fact they're taking things like jokes or things that are very much like Japanese, that are supposed to be funny, or puns, and making them where for us as a Western audience, we will understand it and laugh about it as well, especially if it's supposed to be a joking moment. And in that Twitter thread, the individual goes on to actually talk about localization and explain that a lot of the times it is due to jokes, and because of jokes just may fall flat for Western audiences. If you want a show to do well and it's supposed to be funny, but the jokes they put in there are very much jokes that you will only understand if you are in Japan, if you're within Japanese culture, if you understand the references that they're referencing, you're not going to laugh about it. You're just going to be like, okay, like I guess that's funny. I don't completely understand it, But if they were to change it and make it so where that is a joke that us in the US or us as Westerners will understand, we are going to laugh along with it. And I personally do not have a problem with this because I have seen, now for me, I do enjoy watching a lot of BTS content, and Run BTS is one of their variety shows. And one of the BTS members, Jin, loves to do dad jokes. And sometimes there are Korean puns. I don't speak Korean, so I don't understand the puns. What makes me laugh is his own laugh, is what makes me laugh and what makes it funny to me. But if someone was to do that same pun, but make it into like where I can understand it as a Westerner, as someone in the US, and it is a US equivalent of the same exact joke, I would probably laugh about it and therefore understand it. So there you go. That's kind of what I mean when it comes to localization. Now, how do I feel about all of this? Personally, I don't have an issue with any of this. I never have an issue with translations. I never have issues with dubs, and I never have an issue with anything like localization. Because to me, what they end up doing does not change the context of said show. I know that people will bring up things like Dragon's Maid and a couple of other shows where people had issues with them, but if it's one line and that one line doesn't actually change the entirety of the show and the ending of the show is still exactly the same, you walk away with the same exact feeling, then to me that those changes really don't mean anything, and those changes were made purely for the same reasons, or for the reasons that I have listed, which was due to the fact that the joke was going to fall flat. They were trying to dub it and they had to make sure it fit within a certain amount of parameters, and the subtitled version of the subtitle that was written just didn't work, and so on and so forth. I have no problem with it. I personally only feel like localization and translations have now just become such a big issue within the anime community, where people are constantly getting mad about it or upset about it, is purely because of the internet. And it's because of the fact that we have people who do speak the language who will come out and say, hey, like, this doesn't make any sense, or why did they change this? And then you get everyone all up in an uproar, or people find the subtitle version and then find the dub version and they compare and contrast the two, and that is where you see a lot of these arguments and things happening. Because I'm sure that for many of us who grew up in the 90s or grew up before streaming took place and before the internet really became as big as a thing as it is now, I'm sure if you took the Sailor Moon dub version and took the Sailor Moon subtitled version, it would be completely, utterly different. But because of the fact that we grew up then when there really wasn't anything to compare it to, we just enjoyed the show. And that's how I look at shows as a whole. Did I enjoy the show? Yes. I'm not going to get upset about the translations because I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know what they're saying anyway. But props to everyone that can and can watch something without subtitles, because your girl ain't there yet. But props to all you guys that can. But I'm not going to make a big deal about it because I'm still enjoying the show. It still makes sense to me. I still walk away with the same feeling of the show that I'm assuming that whoever made it wanted us to walk away with. But that is just me. That's my own personal opinion. Feel free to comment below your thoughts about this. I know a lot of fans have like issues with this. And just to continue on with this just a little bit, Japanese anime, just to continue on with this, anime is not the only media that goes through this. Even Western media goes through this. Anytime a movie or a show is shown in another place or another part of the world and it has to be translated, I'm sure that even there they change some of the translations because of the fact that there are English words that just do not have an equivalent, especially when it comes to things like slang and especially when it comes to things like jokes. So I'm sure that when it comes to jokes, they probably change it so that the audience that they are viewing it will laugh and will make sure that that joke is somehow understood. So don't think that anime is the only one that gets this sort of treatment. All media gets this treatment when it is being shown to a different part of the world, to a country or a place that does not speak the original language that said media was made in. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. But let me know your thoughts. Like I said, comment below if you want to know more. Of course, I have links to my social media account. I have Instagram, I have a Twitter, and I also have a TikTok. I'm uploading most of my little mini reviews on my TikTok. So if you want to watch them, feel free to follow me as well on TikTok. Like this video, give it a thumbs up, and of course please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Brand new video probably for Saturday. Like I always tell you guys, stay positive, stay nerdy, and in today's day and age, stay healthy, and of course please stay safe. All right, you guys, bye. Bye.